on here,
Okay.
John, just so I've got a backup.
Sure.
Always fun when you don't record a backup.
Yes. Okay, and I just pressed record my end too.
Fantastic.
So I hope my tiredness doesn't make me a shit contributor to your podcast.
I think you're going
I
to be
guess we'll
fantastic.
find out.
There's only one way to find out, and we're both exhausted at the moment, John. So tick for a wonderful podcast.
Well, yeah. Sometimes when you're all tired and jangly, interesting things come out of your mouth.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
maybe that will happen to us.
We can only hope. I'm going to kick it off, John.
Yeah.
Am I the arsehole? Am I the arsehole? Here to answer those questions and so much less, I am joined by an expert in identifying all kinds of behavior, particularly psychopaths. Jon Ronson, welcome.
Hey, it's such a delight to talk to you.
It's a delight to talk to you. Now, John, I love your book, The Psychopath Test. Now, when did all this start for you? You've written so many books, like So You've Been Publicly Shamed, The Men Who Stare at Goats. When was the first time that psychopaths came on your radar?
I was making a documentary about a woman who realized that she was being conned. She was the victim of a con. And I was making just a BBC documentary with her. And I won't tell you the whole con story. And in fact, funnily enough, I'm doing a psychopath night in Australia come November.
November, yeah.
And this woman is going to be one of my mystery guests, not such a mystery now. She's going to be appearing via Zoom. So I won't tell you her story. Her story is mind-blowing. But the upshot of her story is that she was married to like a really fucked up, guy.
Yeah.
And who treated her terribly in the most bizarre and extraordinary ways. And I'll let her tell that story in October. But at the end of her telling me
you're too tired.
November, sorry.
You can come in October if you want, but the venue won't be ready.
Okay. So anyway, at the end of this conversation with her, I said, you must have been very upset, which is kind of a stupid question, but I think I was probably tired then too. So I just asked a stupid question. And she said something amazing. She said, does the zebra feel upset when it's being chased by a lion? No. I mean, I would argue that maybe the zebra does feel upset. It's like we can't determine.
Yeah.
She said, no, the zebra knows it's in the lion's nature. My husband was a psychopath, and it's in his nature to be manipulative and predatory. And I either thought or said, are you telling me that there's people among us who look and act like normal, but they're more akin to predatory animals than humans? And she said, yes. And I thought that was such an extraordinary thought. And then I interviewed a psychopath expert, a woman called Martha Stout, as a result of doing this story. And she just happened to mention, she said, oh yeah, you're much more likely to find a psychopath at the top of the corporate ladder than at the bottom. And back then, like now people have kind of had that thought, but back then in 2009, I think it was, that kind of wasn't a thought that people were having. And I just thought, whoa, are you telling me that there's a particular mental disorder which happens to be the worst of all mental disorders in terms of malevolence? And that's the mental disorder that society promotes. That
terrifying.
Pushes you to the top. Yeah. So it was those two thoughts really that led me to write The Psychopath Test.
How did you feel meeting someone who has been diagnosed as a psychopath? Because you meet so many amazing people and you really put yourself out there and you meet so many different sorts of people. Was there any trepidation from you to meet a psychopath?
Oh God, yeah, a lot of trepidation. In the Psychopath Test, I went to prison in upstate New York to interview a Haitian death squad leader called Toto Constant, who did the most, when he was, by just the job description of death squad leader, it's going to be some dark shit went on.
Not a relaxed person that's, all unicorns and rainbows.
Right. And anyway, I was talking to him and this happened a couple of times actually, similar, the story I'm about to tell you happened a couple of times with different people. Um, he said to me, I just want people to like me. It's very important that people like me. And he kept saying it. And
Hmm.
finally I said to him, isn't that a weakness? Like wanting people to like you, isn't that a weakness? And he said, oh, no, no, it's not a weakness. And I'll tell you why. He said, if you can get people to like you, then you can manipulate them to do whatever you want them to do. So I
Wow.
said, yeah. So I said, are you the kind of person who doesn't feel empathy? And he said, and a few psychopaths have said pretty much exactly the same answer to me. He said something along the lines of, well, you've got to the nub. I don't think Haitian death squad leaders use the word nub. That's more English. You've got to the heart of what a frank I am, because no, I don't feel any empathy towards other people. Uh, so, well, yeah, that left me with a frightened feeling. And partly for my own, like I was worried that, my God, what if I put him in my book and then he, kills me? And then I thought, well, he's not going to kill me because he's doing 12 to 37 years in
Yeah.
prison. Uh, but then I thought, well, what if he gets like one of his, friends or relatives to kill me?
Yes.
And I remember I was really panicking. I was driving back down to New York City and I pulled into a drive-in Starbucks. I was like so panicking about this. And
To
I
get a
looked at my
disguise.
notes.
Yeah.
Well, I went back over my notes and I noticed that he'd said to me that all of his friends and loved ones have deserted him and won't talk to him
Oh,
anymore. And I thought, you. I,
what a relief.
yeah, but the funny thing about that story is that it was so bleak. Okay, that day I'd never been to upstate New York before. It was so bleak. It was like hailstones the size of pebbles. This was
Wow.
April, memorably horrific. Freezing cold, hailstones. I'm driving. I pull up at this prison that looks like the Shawshank prison, and I make my way through the hail and the wind into this prison. And I said to these guards, hi, I'm here to see Toto Constant. And one of them said, it's Harry Potter. So anyway, I left thinking, God, upstate New York is so bleak and Toto Constant so frightening. I hope I never like come here again. And cut to about 6 years later, and I now live about 4 miles from that prison.
Wow.
It's my home now.
Hiding
Yeah.
in plain sight
Uh,
in case he gets out at any point.
well, well, luckily he did get out and he was immediately deported to Haiti, so I'm safe.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
in the book, you do talk about talking to people and actually asking the question you've assumed from their characteristics. Do you think maybe that you're a psychopath? Is that something that you have to go into a different mindset to ask that question? Because I think that would be quite a terrifying thing to ask someone that you assume might be a psychopath.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, you have to like. I get no pleasure. I'm not a thrill seeker. I'm not like an adrenaline junkie. I don't enjoy any of the dangerous things that I do.
Yes.
The only reason why I do them is because what I love is to be back at home on my own in a room in the safety of my room, making it work as a piece of writing. And if you don't do the scary, dangerous things, then you've got no material to work with when you're back at home. Uh, so think of me as like a sort of sculptor going into a dangerous quarry to get a big block of stone. And that's the dangerous thing. But then when the sculptor's back at home and they start to chip away,
Yep.
that's the joyous part.
That's so great. Now you are doing your tour. It's the Psychopath Night 2024. You're doing it on the 20th of November in Melbourne, 21st of November in Sydney, 24th of November in Brisbane. And you can get your tickets at fane.com.au/Jon Ronson. Now, when you're doing these, how do you feel as a performer doing live things? Because like you said, you're not an adrenaline junkie. How do you feel
Right.
going and doing live shows?
It's funny, I'm less, I mean, this is a classic kind of introverts thing, I think. I'm less uncomfortable on stage than I am at a dinner party.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and I often wonder, like, if I have to go to a dinner party, and by the way, this is very theoretical because I just don't go to dinner parties. So, although I've got, if there's people I really like
Sure.
some neighbours upstate I really like, then I'll do it. But if it's people I barely know,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm in paroxysms of pain in the
Wow.
run up to it, and I don't feel that going on stage. And I wonder why it is. I heard some performer talk about this just the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but they said when I'm on stage, I feel like I'm alone. Like I can't see the audience. There's no one
Yes.
else on the stage.
Yeah.
So maybe that's got something to do with it. And I'd like your opinion on that. And but also I think the other reason is if I'm going to a dinner party where I don't know people, that's you have to like impress them and you have to be interesting. And if you go on stage, you're like you go on stage pre-approved. Like
Sure.
like
They've
the
come to see
people
you.
in the yeah, they've come
Yeah.
to see you, and I think that helps too. So, what about you? I mean, I don't know. You're an introvert, an extrovert. So, what's
I'm
your relationship with all of this?
I think I'm an extroverted introvert. So I think I imagine if I just said I identify as a psychopath. I think for me, I don't mind going on stage, but I would much rather go on stage than at a dinner party. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe the looks of people when you're telling a story and you're thinking in your head, I hope this goes somewhere. But on stage, if it doesn't land, you can move on really quickly and you can't see their faces.
Yeah. Also, I don't know about you, but like if I'm ever in an audience, I would never put my hand up
Oh
to
no.
ask a question. Terrifying. Like that's so intimidating.
Yes.
But I don't mind being on stage. So that's
Yep.
another kind of weird thing
I
I don't
don't
quite
mind
get.
doing, crowd work, John. I was saying to someone the other day that I went to see one of my favorite comedians and they got on stage and I was like terrified because I was right up the front. And my friend was like, you'll be fine because you do this all the time. You'll be fine. And then because I didn't want to say I do comedy when they asked, they were doing some crowd work and they said, what do you do for work? And I said, I don't know. So I kind of feel like you know, people who perform live regularly probably aren't in the best position to help with a show like that and probably are more scared of you than you are of them.
Yeah, totally. But I have enormous respect for people who put their hands up if I say, does anybody have any
Oh,
questions?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What
I
can
mean,
people
that's true. Yeah, I mean, that's courage. Unless you're a narcissist and you love to have a room of people looking at you,
Yes,
then
yeah,
that's not
yes.
courage. Then that's just narcissism. But if you're nervously asking a question, that's true
Yeah,
courage.
absolutely. What can people expect from the live show, John, when you're here in November?
Um, okay, so I try and structure the shows that I do so that if you've read the book, you're still going to get a lot out of the show. There's still a lot of new stuff. And if you haven't read the book, then you'll still really like it. I have mystery guests, so it's almost like a kind of 3D version of the book in a way, because I have mystery guests coming over on Zoom and possibly live on stage too.
Yeah.
I tell some stories that aren't in the book. Um, and then I tell some of the funny stuff from the book too. So it's like a sort of 2 hour long, sort of 3D storytelling show because there'll be little film clips and audio clips, and there'll be mystery guests who have the wildest stories and funny stuff from the book. Yeah.
And can we expect any more podcasting from you at the moment, Jon Ronson? Is there anything that you're currently working on, or things that people can check out if they want to check out everything that you've done in the past, things that that fall apart and things like that?
Totally. Well, the second season of my show, Things Fell Apart, just came out like about 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and we brought them all out at once for binging purposes. So there's sort of 16, 17 episodes of Things Fell Apart that should be on all the podcast platforms.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of it. It's just each episode is its own story, so you can just listen to one. They overlap in interesting ways, but they're mostly standalone episodes, and they're all these very twisty, turny, mysterious human origin stories about the culture wars. So the culture wars being, what tears apart society. And
Yep.
I'm just telling these, I'm honing in on the tiniest stories, but the most extraordinary stories, these little moments that then rippled out and consumed the world. So I'm really proud of Things Fell Apart, and people do like it. So it's going down very well. So I recommend that. Also, I've got 3 Audible shows: The Debutante, which is the story of a Tulsa debutante who, as the result of a series of unlikely and very bad life choices, found herself in one of the most terrifying moments in American history in the 1990s.
It's
And then
a
I've got 2
fascinating
podcasts.
story. It really is. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
And then before that, there was 2 other Audible podcasts, The Butterfly Effect and The Last Days of August, which were both sort of unexpected stories set in the porn industry in Los Angeles. And before that was So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which was the last time I was in Australia doing a couple of talks with my friend John Safran. We did the Sydney Opera House, and we did a lovely theatre in Melbourne, and I can't remember the name of it.
We'll just say one of them. We can just insert theatre name there.
Right.
It's so fascinating, your podcast, and I'm such a big admirer of your work. Is there a format that you like to work in the best, John? Is there something that you find the greatest happiness out of working in a particular way?
Well, I've definitely got it down to podcasting and books.
Yes. Yeah.
I've given up, yeah, I've given up magazine journalism, partly because it's so disposable. You put your heart and soul into something, and it just flitters away in the wind. So
Yes. Yes.
and I gave up screenwriting. I co-wrote a couple of films, Oakja and Frank,
Mhm.
but I just thought I'm not as good at this as I am at nonfiction, and I want to spend my remaining years doing the thing I do best.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I, yeah, and I kind of gave up TV documentaries just because it's kind of a schlep. You have to get cutaways, and you have to
Sure.
work with a crew, and now it's down to podcasts and books, and I just love both
Yeah.
equally in different ways. With podcasting, I like collaborating with a producer.
Mhm.
With books, I like the fact that I'm in total control and I can experiment. And so those are my 2 favorites.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I highly recommend, and I'm very excited to come and see you when you're in Melbourne. John, I highly recommend going to see your show. I saw the live show of So You've Been Publicly Shamed, and it's always such a great experience to be in a room with you, especially when you read some excerpts from people that you've actually spoken to as well. Now, John, I have found some wonderful people who ask the questions on a wonderful website called reddit.com if they are the
Right.
asshole. Now, John, I don't know if you've ever.
Oh, I've been on that. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
been on
yeah,
that
yeah.
page. Yeah.
It's a slightly terrifying page, John, when
Yeah.
people go there because they might not have friends to go to and ask if they're the asshole, so they have to post on Reddit. Now, are you someone who's
Yeah.
been on Reddit at all? Are you ever on there to do any research or find out what people are thinking?
Yes, but only recently. I went on Reddit for the first time about a year ago, so I'm a very recent convert to Reddit.
Yes, yeah.
And I went on for health reasons. I had this illness called diverticulitis. So I
What's
went on the
that?
diverticulitis. It's basically some of your colon dies,
Right. Okay.
dead colon, and it's you feel like you've got like stomach flu, and it's really, when a part of your body stops working, it is kind of odd. Anyway, there's a happy ending to this story, which is that I had surgery for it and I'm now completely cured. So if you don't have to pity me. But I went on the diverticulitis thread on Reddit under my own name, like Jon Ronson,
Oh,
author,
wow.
because I'd once done it and asked me anything. And I'm like asking all these questions about, really, really intimate questions about defecating
Yes.
and so on. And people are going, "Oh my God, I love your books." So then I thought, oh, okay, that's bad. So I
I need to
deleted
step
all of
away.
those. Yeah, and I gave myself a pseudonym. And then I went back onto Reddit on a pseudonym and asked all the intimate questions I needed to ask about diverticulitis. And so that was my entryway into Reddit. And since then, I got really into it. I like Reddit. I like the fact that Twitter is deeply flawed because everybody gets to see into everybody else's lives.
Yes.
And instead of being curious, we're judgmental. So it's too big and open. That's one of the big flaws. So I really like the fact that Reddit is this niche. And I think
Yes.
that's the future. That's both the past and the future, I think, of the internet, is that you go onto boards of, small bubbles.
Absolutely.
It's kinder. Like, I'm sure there's parts of Reddit that are unkind, and I know it's got a bad reputation in some circles, but I've got to tell you, like, my Reddit experience has been nothing but positive. People supporting each other through their diverticulitis surgery and so on.
That's lovely. You found a little community online on Reddit.
Totally. And I went back after I had my surgery and offered people, supportive
Yeah.
supportive words, like, because lots of that forum is like, oh my god, I'm having the surgery next week, I'm terrified. And so
Yeah.
those of us who've been up to the other side can then go back and say, oh no, it's nowhere near as bad as you think it's going to be.
Oh, that's
I'm
really
so glad I
nice.
got it done.
That's
Yeah.
the most
So
positive
that's my
experience I've ever
Reddit.
heard of Reddit. Now,
Yeah. You hear these nightmare stories and I don't really know what they are. Will you tell me?
yeah, I will, of course. I imagine your pseudonym as well, John, is Jon Ronson, not the author, in brackets, just to distinguish yourself.
Yeah, it's Ron Johnson. No, it's not Snore.
Now, John, I'm going to ask you these questions if they're the asshole or not. And I think it'd be great to get your opinion on this, but also your opinion if they are a psychopath, indeed a psychopath as well. Now,
Definitely. And do you tailor these, or like, did you ask Sarah Snook questions from a different part of the internet?
no, it's always Reddit, and I always try and find ones that, I mean, it depends on the person. Sometimes if it's something a bit dark, I do worry about taking it to certain people. But I thought with you, John, I thought I could bring you anything, and I know that you'll be you'll be ready to talk about it.
Game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Is Cameron the asshole? Am,
Okay.
am I the asshole for not flushing the toilet, even though my housemate asks me to? I cannot be bothered flushing the toilet. It can be exhausting at times. I just have a lot on my mind. I use the toilet as a primary thinking place. And when I'm in my thinking cave, I don't want to flush the toilet. So they keep nagging me to do that. And now I've stopped completely. I'm standing my ground. The other day, one of the housemates was crying, asking me to flush, which I thought was all a bit dramatic. I said if she wanted to live in a real world, get used to it. She's not in a fairy tale over here. So, am I the asshole? Now, John, there's a lot to take in all of
Yeah.
that.
Also, I
Some,
felt it shift. I don't know if you noticed, but I felt there was a shift mid story there.
yes, yes.
Because all of that stuff
Crying?
about him using, well, yeah, it was kind of at the midway point. Because the first half, I was kind of with this person,
Yeah,
feeling quite sympathetic, and actually wondering whether they were depressed, because the
sure.
idea of like, it's too much hard work to flush the toilet. That
Yes,
sounded like somebody who's depressed and doesn't even have the energy. So I was like with this person, and
yes.
then the toilet is my thinking place. Again, that's somebody I can identify with. But then about midway through, he kind of shifted into a monster of enjoying hurting people and wanting, just being like an asshole. So yes, I would say if the story ended midway, I would say he's not an asshole. But now
Yes.
I would say he very much is an asshole. What do you think?
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think the fact that there's someone crying and you don't care and you're living in a share house situation as well, John. I feel like if you live by yourself and you want to live as a non-flusher, as I'm sure he calls himself, then I think that you can do what you want. But if you're in a share house situation, I think you have to maybe make it comfortable for other people and maybe don't make people cry all the time. I think that's your responsibility as a housemate.
Yeah, don't make your housemate cry. Um, I mean, they might have been brought up in poorly.
Yes,
I
that's true.
worry. I sometimes worry about, like, not the toilet flushing and certainly not the taking pleasure in people crying. But I probably at that age had some, assuming that this person's in their sort of early 20s.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, I probably had
At a
some
moment.
pretty, yeah, had some ungainly manners at
Sure.
times.
Yeah,
No,
I think we all
nothing is
have.
horrific. Yeah, what about you? Do you look back on those days and cringe at anything in particular?
Absolutely.
Intrusive thoughts,
Yeah, intrusive thoughts that creep in.
intrusive
Oh,
memories.
I probably do of maybe, when you're living in a share house for the first time and maybe you don't know about doing all your washing all the time, or, wearing things like a few days in a row and things, and probably annoying the other housemates with uncleanliness. I think would probably be something in my early 20s that I kind of wouldn't have been so good at.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always been a
I agree.
flusher though.
I've always been a flusher. The whole not flushing thing is pretty mystifying.
Yes.
I may have sometimes shaved and left hairs in the sink.
Yes, yeah, same. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
I feel like definitely I would have been that person. Now, John, the people on Reddit have decided that Cameron is the asshole, so they agree with
yeah.
us in this, and there's no people really commenting. You're doing a great
I
job
do.
on this, and
Yeah, I think that if he'd stopped halfway through his story, I think
yeah,
he would have been
would have been
lauded.
safe. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
we would have carried him
maybe not
out
lauded.
cheering.
Yeah.
We got the next one. Is Sharon the asshole? Am I the asshole for telling my best friend's husband to put on a shirt because he's ugly enough without subjecting us all to that? My best friend Hannah is not the best looking chook, but she is fine to look at. Her husband Mick, though, is awful to look at. She didn't marry him for his looks, let me tell you that. The other week, we were bathing by the pool and he takes his shirt off. His moly, hairy body was just disgusting. I told him to put it back on, that he looked like a big fat pig and he needed to put it back on. Everyone, including my own husband, called me the asshole for the day. Mick was upset and didn't want to talk to me after that, not even coming to dinner. Oh, baby, am I the asshole? Now, John, there's also a lot of conversation there. I feel like for you and I to get out of dinner, maybe we just need to say a similar thing to someone in the future if
Well,
we don't want to go
yeah.
to a dinner party.
These days, I just say no.
No,
I'm not coming. No, I don't need to give a
yeah, that's
explanation.
great. Yeah.
I don't like dinner parties, and I'm not coming. Uh, you know what? I was going to say that she wasn't the asshole until I realized that this scenario played out next to a swimming pool. Like, if they'd been watching TV in the evening and he took his shirt off,
Yes.
then I would say she would have every right to tell him to put it back on. But they were by a swimming pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I
that
feel like I
changes
feel like he's
everything, right?
fine. Yeah, and he's allowed to take his shirt off and not be, not be shamed for having his shirt off, even though she says he's a big fat pig, which I feel like she definitely crossed a line there.
It's all to do with the appropriateness or the inappropriateness of the toplessness, like the setting.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about the setting, and I feel it's very, very odd to say that to someone and then be
I,
confused if they're crying or they're upset, or it's kind of like the flusher as well, just confused that their
yeah.
actions are hurting someone else.
Yeah. Isn't it weird though that, like, imagine somebody's by a swimming pool and they take their shirt off, um, and they're like walking around by the swimming pool shirtless. Fine. The
Yes.
minute they step inside the house, if they're still shirtless, it's like that's not fine anymore.
No, it's a weird barrier, isn't it? You always feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like I certainly feel uncomfortable on a hot day when you see someone just walking around without a shirt on. And I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. It's
It's
because it's not in the pool.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, no, that's weird and aggressive. I worry slightly that Australian mores are different to British and New York mores. Like, um, because I always remember, like, I always remember Stephen Fry or somebody tells a funny story about farting in a funeral.
Sure.
And and I remember like how embarrassing it was and how ashamed. And I always remember this because like somebody from Australia said, I think he told the story in Australia,
Yeah.
and he didn't know why nobody was like, laughing along with the embarrassment of the situation. And somebody told him afterwards, it's because in Australia, if somebody farts at a funeral, nobody will be embarrassed. Everybody will think it's great. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. People will be laughing along. People will bring it up for years after. They'll be laughing. Even the fartee will probably be laughing and be fine being pointed at, and probably do it again, John. Probably force another fart out.
God, that's so different to British culture. If that
Yes.
happened in Britain, the farter would just kill themselves.
Yeah, it's the only option.
Yeah.
Walk, walking around without a shirt on is such a bizarre thing to do in public.
Yeah,
On
like
hot
walking
days.
down
Yeah.
the street or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, I look at somebody like that and I think they're aggressive.
Yes.
They're an
Yeah.
angry, aggressive person.
Yes, yeah. And I think you're
Yeah.
right to always assume that. Because yeah, when you see someone without a shirt on, you have to step back a bit. You think they're going to probably try and fight you. Now, I feel like at a pool
Yes.
situation, I feel like that's fine because
You
obviously
know where
you're
else it's
fine.
fine?
Mm,
I've just thought of somewhere else where toplessness is fine.
yep.
Um, if you're the drummer in a punk band,
That's true. That's
like
true. Yes.
yeah, like Amel and the Sniffers, right? The drummer in
Yes.
Amel and the Sniffers
Yep.
is often without a shirt.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
true. They they
yeah,
can't
and it's
play properly
and
with a
no
shirt
problem.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Pools are fine,
And if
drums are
you're a drummer,
fine.
a
Yeah,
drummer
but
in a punk
no
band.
other.
No
Yeah,
other
but no other
circumstances.
situation.
Now, John,
Yeah.
have you got time for one more? Am I the asshole?
Sure, I'm enjoying this. This is the closest I'm getting to socializing
Yeah, great,
today.
great. And there's no dinner involved, so you're fine.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, exactly.
is Jules the asshole? Am I the asshole for telling my son that he is far too fat to sit on top of my lap, and also that his girlfriend is ugly? Now, there's two things there, John, that aren't related at all. But I feel like just from that alone, we might go, well, Jules might be the asshole in this situation.
Shiva, is there ever a situation with Am I the Arsehole where the consensus is that they're actually not an arsehole, or are they
Not
always an
really.
arsehole?
Mostly, I
Uh,
think if you're going to Reddit to post "Am I the asshole," you usually are the
you
asshole.
are the arsehole.
I just said it, and I don't know if I was meant to what I said, but I said, and that's all done now. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to read, John, because I don't worry about grammar so much. They furiously type it out and post it. My son is 17, and the other day we were laughing about what a big baby he used to be. I told him, "You're a big baby," and we laughed for so long. Now, I don't know if there was more to the joke, John, but it does sound pretty funny. He said, "Well, if I'm a big baby, let me sit on your lap then." And I told him he was too fat to sit on my lap. He'd break me. Then I kept going and also said his girlfriend is an ugly toad. So am I the asshole? Everyone says I am. Now,
uh, it's kind of a two-parter, right? I mean, I think we could all agree that in the second part of the story, she's
yes,
an asshole.
yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, that's pretty unambiguous. But the don't sit on my lap, you're too fat, you're
Yep.
17, you'll break me.
Yes. Yep.
I have a little bit of sympathy for her there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know what they're like, their family dynamic is like as well. So maybe in this circumstance they do a bit of ribbing, they kind of roast each other. Maybe that's how they show love. We don't know if they're constantly roasting each other
Yeah.
and having a little poke at each other.
Yeah, agreed. It could be very loving.
Yeah,
Of the three stories you told me, she's definitely the one who's hovering towards the not being an asshole,
that's
I'd
right.
say.
Will the people on
Because
Reddit?
it,
Oh, sorry, John.
uh, well, no, just because of what you said, it could be, the way that, people in Britain and Australia call each other cunts with affection.
That's right.
Um, But you don't do that where I am now in New York. You don't do that.
No.
Uh, yeah, but I'm curious. Yeah, what did Reddit think?
Reddit said, which I've never seen before in my life, they said need more information.
Well, like we do, we don't know
Yeah,
what the
the
yeah
context.
yeah.
Yeah.
And did she give any more information?
No, there was no further follow-ups. I think she posted and left.
Okay.
John, language
Uh,
is such an interesting thing in America. Did you find that a shock when you came to Australia that you found out that, or I guess English is kind of a little bit similar, but in Australia we seem a lot freer with the word cunt.
yeah, no, because England is too. I'd say
Yes.
England and Australia use the word cunt in a
Mm,
similar way. But in America, it's completely different, and it did give me a
yeah.
shock. I was going around calling everybody cunts when I
Just
first
pointing at them and
arrived.
calling them that. Yeah.
Yeah, cunt, you daft cunt. And I know, and I got told off. I got
Did
badly
you?
told off by somebody. Yeah, basically somebody said, this is a little bit surprising because you tend to only call men cunts,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
And I don't, and I think I only call men cunts.
yes, yeah.
Um, but somebody said to me in America, that's like the N word, and
Right. Okay. Wow.
yeah,
Because it's a term of
and I
endearment in
thought,
Australia a lot of the time.
yeah, oh, I'm Britain too. I'm
Yeah,
Britain
yeah,
too, absolutely. Yeah, so that did give me a surprise, and now I don't use it here
yeah,
when I'm in.
absolutely. Now,
But
John, you
the minute I land in Australia, I'm going to be making up for lost time.
you can point at me and call me one, and I'll be absolutely fine with it.
Yeah.
Do you think anyone here is a psychopath, John? Do you think when you're looking at someone now, do you have a list of things that you can identify someone as a psychopath, or as a lot of people kind of get them commonly confused as sociopath?
Yeah, well, actually, um, the term psychopath and sociopath, most people would say are pretty interchangeable.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah, some people will say, oh, a sociopath is different in this way or whatever. But the kind of consensus, this was the conclusion I came to when I was writing the psychopath test. But then I did an excerpt of the book on This American Life, and they did a big fact check and came to the same conclusion. So,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, but I'll tell you one, you can definitely get too drunk with your psychopath spotting powers. You start,
Yes, yes.
everybody who ever crossed you, you can start,
Yeah.
diagnosing as a psychopath, like critics who gave you documentaries about review. Um, but but yeah, there's certain skills. I mean, this is one of the enjoyable aspects of going to Psychopath Night,
Yeah.
the show that's coming up, is that I kind of teach people the checklist, like how to spot a psychopath. It's a 20-point checklist.
Yes.
Um, and so as items like shallow affect, which is an inability to experience a range of emotions, or promiscuous sexual behavior, glib superficial charm. But glib superficial charm is interesting because it's like the charm, they're very charming,
Yes.
but you get the sense that it's just on the surface and there's nothing going on underneath. It's like a chasm of nothingness going on underneath, which is what
Wow.
separates a psychopath from a narcissist, because narcissists, I think, have a lot going on underneath, a lot of
Yes.
wounds that won't heal, whereas psychopaths, it's like just an emptiness.
Yeah.
With,
Just a vacant
yeah.
look and an emptiness. Because in a lot of ways, the term narcissist I was reading the other day is very overused now, and like you were
Mm.
saying, the term psychopath is overused. Do you think that have you noticed that people are very quick to diagnose as time has gone on and people have learnt more about it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm very glad that the second half of my book, The Psychopath Test, is kind of a cautionary tale to not do that. So I don't think I don't think the popularity of that book really added to it too much. And certainly not if people read the whole book and took the message of the second half.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
it can turn you a little bit having the power of spotting a psychopath can turn you a little bit psychopathic. To
Yeah.
just reduce people to their outermost edges. So
Yes.
the book is kind of a critique of the test as well as being being impressed by the test too. It looks at it from both sides, because that's the other side of it, is that it is kind of amazing, this idea that psychopaths can be spotted almost like puzzles by the nuances of their language and their behavior and so on. Is so if you get them in the right mood, that they will say the right thing.
Yes,
So it is
yeah.
fascinating. Narcissist, yeah, it's annoyingly overused, because actual narcissistic personality disorder, just like actual psychopathy, is a very narrow set of criteria. And
Yes, yeah.
so just saying that anybody who's self-involved or whatever is a narcissist is a kind of, is just annoyingly wrong.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And John, before we wrap it up on the podcast, I did want to ask you. So the first book I ever read of yours was So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which I absolutely loved, and then started doing a deep dive into other things that you'd done. So You've Been Publicly Shamed was
Cool.
such a thing of the time, and something that was really necessary at the time, and kind of you showed a lot of compassion for people who would send a tweet and then their whole life would change. They'd lose their job, they'd lose their partner. What do you think now, if you were to write that book now? Do you think it's only gotten worse in a way? Do you think that people are a little bit more wary of how they're using their social media footprint?
I think it's really mutated. Like, I think the days of, so I guess the sort of centerpiece of Saving Publicly Shamed was the Justine Sacco story, because
Yes.
she was like the patient zero of public shaming. She's the one who was trying to do a kind of South Park bit,
On her
she
private
tweeted going
account
to
as well, wasn't it?
well, it was public, but she only had 170 followers, so
Yeah,
she never
yeah.
got any replies. So she tweeted what she thought was the joke, mocking her own privilege, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. And then she got on a plane, and while she was asleep on a plane, Twitter just took control of her life and dismantled it.
Yes.
So by the time she landed, her life had completely changed, and it all happened while she was asleep and oblivious. No, I don't think that would happen anymore. I
No.
think I think that there's much more of a back and forth these days if somebody's getting shamed, because there's a lot of anti-shaming people,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
and so it becomes much more of a sort of democratic back and forth. So that's one positive thing. But I tell you, one unexpectedly negative thing, I think,
Mm.
is in the book, in So You've Been Publicly Shamed, I look at how if we overuse our shaming weapon, we can turn transgressors into almost like hospital superbugs, like impervious to
Yes.
treatment.
Yes.
And that seems to have happened a lot in the world, that people have become too unashamed. Now, if you're somebody like Justine Sacco, who was disproportionately punished, then being unashamed, I think, is a good thing, because, she had to like apologize profusely and then disappear, and she really didn't deserve it. She was trying to do a South Park joke.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was no big deal. So for somebody like her, this new world of being unashamed, I think, is probably healthier. But there's so many actual transgressors, people who do bad things, who sexually assault people and stuff, or who are racist,
Yes.
who have now taken a leaf out of that book and become completely unashamed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's creating a bad world, I'd say. People need to feel bad if they do bad things.
Yes. Unless you're a psychopath, and you probably won't feel bad about the things that you've done now.
Absolutely, yeah, unless you're a psychopath. But most people aren't. Most people are a mess. So, so I do think that's a unintentional negative byproduct of our overuse of shame as a weapon, is that we've created
Absolutely.
this world of shameless people.
Absolutely. Now, tickets to Jon Ronson to see while you're in Australia will be in the show notes. You can go to fame.com.au/Jon Ronson. You will be in Melbourne on the 20th of November, the 21st of November in Sydney, and the 24th of November in Brisbane. Jon Ronson, this has been a real thrill for me to get to talk to you. You're someone I admire hugely, and I'm a huge fan of your work. So thank you so much for joining me on Am I the Arsehole?
Sam, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. I'll just stop recording here. Thank you so much.